wasn't born.
You keep all your hate from me.
I was made.
Why? Is that all it would take to make you feel home?
You desecrated her! Enslaved her!
Why do you keep all your hate from me?
Hello Foundation fans, fellow Mudbeards, and anyone else who can't get over that brother dude hallucination scene. And today, I just kind of wanted to go over a little bit more of what specifically went down within this segment, and what it entails for the rest of the series. Fans of the channel know I'm very involved in characters when it comes to storytelling, and where their arcs potentially lead them. And one thing that's great about the Foundation series is, specifically with Empire, they display a lot of their character through dialogue with each other and subtle hints and clues. It's very rare we get an entire segment specifically targeted at developing a Cleon, and I thought this was a very creative and well implemented way of doing so, as a lot of people were genuinely wondering how Cleon became Brother Dude. Anyways, we're just gonna go right into the scene here and sort of break it down. It starts with Brother Dude, who I'll probably refer to as Day a few times, transitioning into the red percolator and becoming trapped, which could potentially symbolize him being trapped in a decampment chamber. This leads us to a very subtle and cool transition out of the water and into the Imperial Palace, where the red color scheme fades to a blue hue. Essentially, when it comes to a psychedelic trip, users who decide to partake, which I highly don't recommend as it can be very unsafe for the mind and neurologically, and requires a lot of preparation and well-researched safety tips and guidance. But still, you can do some research and find that a common route people usually go on when consuming psychedelics is a slow build-up where everything shifts around them, sort of like we see with the Brother Dude scene, where around him the environment sort of became a little more hazy. Then there's a moment where everything hits like a truck. This could be indicated to us by the transition scene where he ended up becoming trapped in what could be seen as a decampment chamber. This, followed by him completely losing sense of reality and imagining himself back in the Imperial Palace. Brother Dude has been divulging in this hedonism for quite a bit, but I'm sure he used the proper Imperial research scientists to test everything and make sure it was all safe for him to consume first. Either way, throughout his wandering through the Imperial Palace, he tries to avoid the throne, being haunted by dialogue of a future conversation we'll see him have with Demerzel as a child. An interesting thing to know, what pulls him away from this dialogue with Demerzel is Cleon the First and their conversations with his digital memory. Brother Dude has consistently been avoiding his Imperial responsibilities, and this is sort of Cleon the First or his original father trying to get his attention, creating a loop he can't really escape from. This then leads him to the Mural of Souls, where Demerzel indicates this is the history of the genetic dynasty. The Mural of Souls itself actually indicates the history of humanity and the Galactic Empire, but this specific segment is touching on the genetic dynasty. Now this mural is pretty interesting. I think if you actually study it a little bit, there is a few clues as to what's going on here. Now there is a later mural scene with Brother Dusk and Quint that shows the last 3 centuries of Empire's conflict with Foundation. But this scene specifically is showing the genetic dynasty's history, which is still very heavily tied to Foundation in general. As we can see here, it seems there's actually an image of Terminus being destroyed, and Invictus being shot out of the sky to fall into Terminus, likely alluding to the ending episodes of Season 2. And then towards the right side of the mural, you can see what is presumably Cleon the First, with an embryo of the clone directly in front of him. On each side of the murals, there is a blockage covering whatever is creating each side. Could this potentially be Kalle and Demerzel? And if you note some of the figures towards the lower end of the mural, you can see that towards the right side / the Cleonic side, there seems to be a frantic humanity running towards the center. Then if you glance over to the left side, you can see what seemingly is a lot of loyal figures sitting down. Their only distinctive difference is the shape of their head, which makes me wonder if this could potentially symbolize robots. Each species approaching its destiny in a different way, with Demerzel specifically being the one connective tissue between both of them. Is there potentially a chance that Demerzel, being a robot, needed to endure everything she's been enduring to really gain a sense of sympathy for humanity? It seems the left side of the mural indicates destruction and obedience, while the right side indicates frantic creation. Either way, Demerzel reminds Day of his true existence, how he's a small role dictated by a man centuries ago, which can already be a hit to the old human spirit, but Brother Dude does continue to reiterate the fact that he wasn't even born. He's well aware of his place, and he hates it. Brother Dude has been someone who's consistently been upset with everything around him, even in this moment indicating to us that his very existence makes him uncomfortable. But this hallucination of Demerzel once again puts him in his place. See, as much as Empire would like to associate all his problems to what he currently has, or the lack of control he has as well, there is still a sense of control and agency he has in comparison to many others. Not only the common folk of Trantor or the barbarians of the Outer Reach, but even Demerzel. With Demerzel asking if him having the history of being born instead of decanted would really make a big difference. I don't think Brother Dude ever really even considered this, as he sort of fell into a hedonistic absurdism mentality. So asking himself this question is likely to actually destroy what little pride this Brother Dude actually has. And when I say little pride, I mean in comparison to every other Cleon we've seen on screen, this Brother Dude is probably the least prideful. But still, this entire segment is essentially his ego death. There's still things he has to get over. This eventually leads to Brother Dude sort of balancing out for a moment and communicating with Song, who indicates that she's very upset with how he, but more specifically Cleon the First, had imprisoned Demerzel and essentially desecrated her. To the inheritance, robots are a holy figure. This probably throws Brother Dude off even more, as he's consistently saw her as an it. But with this horrible bad trip fuel, it once again transitions into Demerzel asking why Brother Dude holds all his hate for her. This puts us back in the Imperial Palace, where Brother Dude approaches a Demerzel completely still and covered in dust. This likely is symbolizing the fact that at the end of the day, she is going to be there in the Empire even if nobody else is around. Her programming forcing her to potentially be forever alone if humanity completely dies out, and she's left incapable of creating robots. Which, speaking of creating robots, this transitions us into another scene where Brother Dude is remembering one of his childhood memories with Demerzel. See, one reasonable fear and resentment Brother Dude has is the fact that if none of the clones can necessarily keep up on their behaviors or mannerisms, the odds of Demerzel killing them and decanting them and replacing their memories without them even realizing it is actually pretty high. So growing up, all these times trying to be the best Cleon that he could and potentially seeing himself and or others fail, and never really knowing if he was killed and replaced at any point in his life, really would leave anyone feeling like a puppet being controlled. But during the segment where he's speaking with Demerzel, he's asking if she happened to hurt herself because she was crying. This being a point in Cleon's life where they simply are too innocent and ask questions. Similar to Season 1, when Cleon the 13th, I believe, was asking about Demerzel and her species, and in Season 2, when Demerzel first met with Cleon the First. Now, Demerzel's coldness when it comes to correcting the Cleons could be seen as Brother Dude just in that moment how he remembered the actual sequence going down, or it could even be Demerzel fighting back in the small ways that she can, finding a small bit of joy in making the Cleons be so obedient, as the odds of ever escaping herself are extremely low. Still, the reason Demerzel could be crying here could be many, but is likely because she had just gotten over decanting another clone, potentially even the Brother Dude kid we see standing right behind her. Again, these clones would have no way of ever really knowing, and Demerzel does consistently escape to her makeup room to release all the stress she has, especially after killing a Cleon. It's then we cut to her convo later with Brother Dude. It's here she continues to tell him a story like she always has, and she reveals a bit more about herself. It's here that we get a lot of allusions to different characters from the books. And while the TV series is extremely different from the books, each one of these characters in Chetter, Ito, and daneel were very vital in the creation of psychohistory and the story going on in the background of Foundation. So this was just sort of solid clarification for book readers that Demerzel is still definitely taking the role of her character from the books, up to a certain extent, as we don't really know how her role will play out in the future of the series. And that's primarily due to the introduction of the character of Kalle. She claims she was a servant for houses, which in my eyes means great houses. She then claims she was a builder, which could honestly mean many different things. Before the Robot Wars, there was an idea of potentially guiding humanity as a whole, and stepping away from the original 3 laws of robotics. Or she could have just been heavily involved in designing more parts of the galaxy. Either way, this leads to her referencing herself being a soldier, likely during the Robot Wars, and then as a prisoner, which Cleon once again asking a kid-like question, when was she ever a prisoner? And Demerzel not really being able to answer that. He questions what she would do if she was capable of ever being free, and she claims that she would simply make more robots, more people like her. This makes Cleon sad, as in his eyes it just means she wants better children who maybe can follow her orders a little better. Again, the strict guidance to make each Cleon be a perfect representation of the first, with the continuous genetic decline of the actual clones, it would definitely leave anyone asking this question as well. And this same sadness Cleon possesses could turn into resentment within the future, explaining how we got the Brother Dude we got today. And as we've seen with other Cleons, you'd think this would lead to him being very violent and hateful towards Demerzel. And while he is still hateful, it's in a very different way. I would call it more disrespectful than anger. He has an idea that Demerzel is essentially a prisoner and simply following her programming, which probably not only irritates him more about his own existence, but also leaves him potentially feeling like a prisoner himself. And with this segment, it's showing him that no matter how much he hates his life, his existence, and the idea that he has no control, Demerzel has it even worse, as well as many other people. And while grief isn't necessarily comparable, this entire ordeal is specifically a dive into Brother Dude's mind, and is primarily going to be used, in my eyes, as a way to defeat his own ego. Going forward in the rest of the season, we're going to see a very different version of Brother Dude, unless you're watching this post season 3 and I'm completely wrong, in which case like and subscribe to prove how wrong I actually was. But it does beg the question, why would Demerzel necessarily want to create more robots? The easiest conclusion to come to is that if she can create an army, she can get revenge for everything humanity has put her through. Humanity is a disease. Humanity can't control themselves. Humanity destroyed her entire species and imprisoned her for several thousands of years. Imagine being taken by aliens and kept as their servant for centuries. Taking revenge on humanity, as I've said before, or potentially the more likely answer in that she's just sad. See, robots, as far as we can tell, are extremely similar to humans in a lot of different ways, depending on their programming, but even before Demerzel was programmed by Empire, she carried a lot of human-like qualities and characteristics. So let's take that context and put it into the perspective that she could also have emotions and human feelings. Now we really are left with the question, what dictates a sentient being worth respecting and valuing as a form of life? And what dictates a machine? Unless this is all some big lie and all part of a meticulous plan for her programming, being even more convoluted than the Prime Radiant and how it works. In my eyes, I truly think that she was part of a species that was even more empathetic and bonded than humanity ever could be. See, she references a capability she used to possess with other robots, that being clasping. In this moment, they would share thoughts and memories. In a reality where empathy is just a touch away, we would avoid a lot more conflict. And Demerzel may simply want to return to that reality and not be so alone or take revenge on the species that destroyed it. Either way, she's one of the best robots in sci-fi storytelling, and I'll be getting more into detail in my Kalle and Demerzel video.
I cannot weigh love against freedom.
This is a very layered response. Not only can she literally not weigh that dichotomy because she's programmed in a way that leaves it a paradox for her, but she also did potentially have real feelings for Cleon the First. And presumably he truly did love her back. But love is like hate, and everybody does it differently. Just because you love someone doesn't mean you're loving them, they need to be loved. And the hate you give could be much worse than the hate that's necessary. And had she known in that moment that the love that she was being given and maybe even possessed would have led to her being imprisoned for tens of thousands of years, with no sense of control or ever having any hope of escape, and with the person who initiated it bouncing out of the picture in what can be compared to as a blink in the grand scheme of time she spent there, yeah, I don't think I'd weigh love over freedom either. Everyone has the capability of love, and everyone has the capability of hate. What bonds people together is when that love can match up, and what tears people apart is when they can't learn how to properly hate. And that seems like a double entendre. I don't think there is a way to properly hate anything, but there's a way to illustrate your discomfort and disliking of something without being violent or imprisoning someone for thousands of years. Anyone in this position and in retrospect would have chosen freedom. And should Demerzel ever get the opportunity to be free again, choosing freedom will likely be the first thing she does, no matter who is in front of her. And I think Brother Dude realized this. Maybe not the risk factor of potentially freeing Demerzel, but the fact that she really is the most imprisoned individual in the entire galaxy. So yeah, when it comes to weighing love against freedom,
freedom would win.
But this was just a quick video I wanted to make on Demerzel and what was going on with that hallucination scene. Either way, appreciate the support, appreciate the feedback, and remember, don't do drugs.